Hey guys, welcome back to the Outlook Industries podcast. It's your host, Trevor Johnson, back here in the studio, getting another great episode done for you today. Today we have Matthias Giraud. He is Super Frenchie on Instagram. What an absolute awesome individual I got to talk to today. He has done base jumps off of some of the major peaks around the world, and he just released his movie, Super Frenchie, where he just kind of goes through 11 years of his life and his journey doing all these ski base jumps, and it's insane. I got linked up with him through a mutual friend who's actually a professor at Fort Lewis, and Matthias graduated from Fort Lewis, I think in 2006, if I remember right. And yeah, he's just out doing all sorts of action sports endeavors throughout the world, which is super crazy. He does lots of talks and stuff. So I was really excited to get the opportunity to talk to him today. And we had a great conversation about just a lot of things that go into action sports and kind of the mental barriers and where your head has to be to do all these crazy things that he does. And I really learned a lot while talking to Matthias. So I hope you guys enjoy this podcast as much as I did. And let's get right into it.
It's the Outlook Podcast. We're here at the Outlook Podcast. Just because we're here, we're talking to cool people.
How's it going, guys? We're here with Matthias. How you doing?
I'm doing good, and you?
Doing great. Thank you so much for taking some time out to come and talk to me. It means so much to me, so thank you.
My pleasure.
So what's kind of your backstory? Where did you grow up, and how did you end up here doing what you're doing?
Well, it's a long story, but yeah, I'm French originally. Super Frenchie, of course. I was born in Normandy, and my parents had a vacation home in the Alps, so I'd go, skiing in the Alps every vacation. Then they moved to south of France. They couldn't afford their home anymore, so they sold it. But by then, I got picked up by a ski team in the Alps. So then I moved to ski academy in the Alps for ski racing, and became a mountain kid by adoption. And then after that, I was thinking too much about skiing, so my parents pulled me out of ski academy and they locked me up in a private Catholic school in south of France with bars on the windows.
Wow!
So I rebelled as much as I could by pretty much failing out of school, but then I barely passed, and then we kind of reached an agreement where I could ski as much as I wanted as long as I took care of school. And so we kind of figured out some stuff, which is in the first place what I was doing in ski academy anyway. I had great grades. I was ski racing, so it really felt unfair to get pulled out of there. I knew I wanted to be a skier and do something in the mountains since I was 9 years old, so yeah. And anyway, fast forward a few years, went to business school in Lyon, and then that was the closest city to the mountains, but it still wasn't enough. And then eventually I was able to transfer to Fort Lewis College in Durango, Colorado. And I studied business there. The plan wasn't to really turn pro. I was just trying to kind of get in the ski industry any way I could. And so I was interning at Purgatory, and they became my first sponsor. Started to send me to free ride competitions. I was doing the U.S. Extreme free skiing in championships in Crested Butte. Then started doing the U.S. free skiing tournament as well. And one thing led to another. I was getting I got sponsored head to toes within the 3 months of moving to first 3 months of moving to Colorado. Then started skydiving. I met Shane McConkey, told me how to get into base jumping. Then I started base jumping, ski base jumping. Graduated from the fort, and then fast forward a few years later, then I'm skiing off cliffs for a job.
That's so crazy how that all works out. My biggest question is, from being in the Alps, which I, growing up in America, have always looked at the Alps as like the best skiing. How did you end up coming to the US? And
well, there's not many places where you could, study and ski, and we have universities near the mountains in France, but there's not many, and Durango was one of the only places in the world where I could still study, get a legitimate degree, and then and ski full time. So that's what triggered the move to the US. Okay. And I had an American friend that pretty much was my mentor, who was involved with Purgatory, and so he helped me kind of get there, and that's how I ended up. But the Alps are nothing compared to the Alps. I definitely took the Alps for granted. My home resort is a medium-sized resort for the Alps, and we have 89 lifts.
Wow. No way.
You're allowed to go out of bounds. You can do whatever you want, as it's at your own risk. And if you get hurt and it's in a spot that's too dangerous to get rescued, they'll leave you to die. So it's like the real deal, and you can go out of bounds. You can do whatever you want. So I just grew up, 14 years old. When I was ski racing, I would just, duck a rope and jump a 30-foot cliff under the chairlift all the time, like it was not a big deal. It was completely normal. But, you always hear about the Rockies and all the other mountains around the world, and I had skied in Tahoe once, and I was really impressed with the kind of snow they got. And the terrain was a lot smaller, but really fun. And so when I had the opportunity to transfer to the forts, there was no question about it. But then my first day skiing at Perg, I remember, I hitched a ride up there. First of all, I was like, what do you mean it's not ski in, ski out? You have to drive 30 minutes to go skiing? They were like, yeah, man, you get a car. You need a car. And I was like, what? So I found a SAP for $500, but until then I was just, carpooling with kids from the fort, right? And my first day at Perg, I skied the whole mountain in 2 hours. And I was like, oh my God, what am I going to do here for 5 years? This is when I grew up in the Alps. To me, that's what mountains were. It's just like, well, of course they're massive. Of course you ski 5,000 vertical from the top. Of course it's normal. Yeah. And I just didn't know any better. And then when I moved to Southwest Colorado, I realized that it was skiing. It was amazing, but it was a completely different kind of skiing. So I had to adapt to the kind of riding that you do. But, then I discovered through going backcountry, going to Silverton, still Perg. I love Perg. It's just, you don't approach the Rockies like you approach the Alps. It's just a different kind of terrain, and it's got its peculiarities and risk as well. The avalanche danger is way higher, things like that. So it was a learning experience to learn to adapt to a new mountain range.
Yeah. So how did you hear about the fort all the way from France? That's because I am from South Dakota originally, and without like having a friend who went here, there was no way I would end up here.
Well, it's funny, actually. The first time I heard about the fort, I was about to graduate high school. I was maybe a year out. Yeah. And I was like, I want to go study abroad. There's no way I want to stay in France because, France is awesome, but it's, when you're from one place, you want to check out other places, right? It's just the way it is. And so I just kind of researched on the internet at the time, schools that were in snowy places. So I looked at Scandinavia, Norway, of course. I looked a little bit everywhere. And then I found this place called Fort Lewis College, in Durango, Colorado, but I didn't think too much of it. Kind of forgot about it, honestly. Then I went to school in Lyon in France, and that family friend was a businessman who was a part investor of Purgatory, but not like, one of the major owners. And he was like, hey, he bought a house in south of France where my parents lived, which is a tiny village of 2,000 people or something.
Wow.
And so we helped him kind of get settled and all that. And then once he heard I was just crazy about skiing and I'd go skiing all the time, we went skiing in the Alps together. And then he invited me to ski at Kirkwood because Kirkwood was a sister resort of Purgatory at the time. He was part of the same investor group. And when I skied there, then, went back to the Alps and he came and skied with us too. And he was like, hey man, I talked to one of the resorts that I'm part owner of in Colorado, and we can help you move to the States. And there's a college there called Fort Lewis College. They have a really good business program because I was in a really good business school in France, 5-year business school, like, only 120 seats, 3,000 people apply to get in the school and they only take the top 120. Somehow I got in and I don't know how that worked out, but anyway. And so that's how it happened. And he had already called the fort. He was like, okay, you're going to receive an application in the mail next week. So he really jump-started the whole thing. And he was just, a self-made businessman who still had some, high fives along the way and people helping him. And so he believed into this mentorship kind of positive, I guess, humanistic attitude. And so he helped me do that. But then after that, I was pretty much on my own, so he opened the door, I had to make it work, and then once I heard there was an opportunity for me to study business in a place where I could ski every day, I didn't think twice. I knew I packed my bag and had to break up with my beautiful girlfriend at the time, unfortunately, and then moved to the US.
I'm going to the US.
Yeah. It was rough, man. She was the first woman I loved, man. The first woman I learned to love with, and she was beautiful. And hey, but it's okay, we're still friends. We're still in touch, actually. It's pretty funny.
That's awesome. Do they teach English in France in school?
Yeah, you learn to start. Yeah, I mean, you start learning English around 9 or something, but very basic. And then start age 11, you start, conjugating, irregular verbs, everything, building sentences and all that. But French people are pretty bad about languages in general. But my mother is Dutch, and so I grew up in an international house, and we kind of spoke a little bit of everything at home. My older sister speaks 7 languages. My other sister speaks 5. I'm the slacker of the family. I only speak 2.5, I guess, and then, I spoke English fairly often, but I wasn't fluent. And when I was failing out of school, on purpose, after being pulled out of ski academy, I grew up surfing as well, quite a bit, and my parents were trying to motivate me, and they weren't wealthy people, but they were just trying to, do the best they could for their kid, and they were like, all right, they realized they messed up when they pulled me out of ski academy because I had great grades and I was skiing hard. So my rebellion worked in a way,
There you go.
And they were like, all right, if you pass, we're going to send you to a surf camp this summer in California. So I was like, oh, there was no missing the opportunity. So I studied hard till 2, 3 in the morning, every day, every night, I guess. Woke up at 6:30 to go to school, did that for a couple months, got my grades up just enough. And then they sent me to the US. And that trip actually, putting my life on the brink of failing, just to make a statement, actually served, because then I had to commit to this. And that trip to the US, that's just a summer trip. I was 2 weeks in a family and then 2 weeks in a camp, friends of friends. And so this way I could, practice English more. And then after a month I came back and still had an accent. Of course, I can never get rid of that, but I spoke English fluently. And so that helped me for the rest of my life. So that one trip actually is really kind of what put my life on the right track already, so.
Yeah, it's just crazy to me, because if I think about going to any other country with a different language and going into college of all things, like the level of language that you need to be at to even like understand what's going on. Like, I don't know what's going on in English most of the time. It seems like a crazy transition.
Well, if you think of the French language, is pretty intricate and very complicated. And we have a lot of words actually that are sometimes, false friends, where it's the same word, but it means something completely differently. But there are some similarities. And also, I studied German in school as well, a little bit, and 85% of English comes from German. Uh-huh. And, my other side of the family is Dutch. So these are kind of like sister languages of English, even though they're completely different. Even though French is completely different, there's still some, I think the structure of the language and the intricacies of it help you become more precise. And so when I learn English, and also the French school system is very, very rigid and very thorough. So I learned the basics, the fundamentals of English. I learned them pretty well, I think. And then after that, being immersed in the US and then just putting it to use kind of made it come full circle, so that's how it works.
Yeah. Yeah,
so awesome. I wasn't too scared of going to the US and studying in English. It was just an exciting opportunity, and it was a little challenging the first trimester, but I took actually an English composition 101 class, because they require that for all foreign students.
Yeah.
And then, but halfway through, I ended up getting a scholar award for writing and all that. So everything's really clicked in. So it was really cool. Actually, you know what? A lot of people, talk about the Ford as for leisure or for loser, whatever. People on the 8-year plan and not doing much. But I had a great education at Fort Lewis. And I came from one of the best business schools in France, went to the Fort, which technically would have been a downgrade. But as far as my life plan, it really served a purpose really well. And I'm still in touch with some of my teachers from the Fort. Thank you. I had a great education. So the Fort was awesome. And that's the thing, man. You make what you make out of education. You can get as much as you want out of it, and I see so many kids who are just total slackers, and these guys were not really going to get anywhere. They kind of got a degree just to get a degree. I think it's like anything you do, if you do it with a plan and intention and purpose, you're going to do much better at it, and whether you're skiing or skydiving or whatever you pick, or arts, if you have a plan in mind and you apply your constructive approach and structure to reaching your goal, then you can only get good results. And the Fort was really fitting almost perfectly my ambition in life, so.
Yeah, that's awesome. Actually, how I heard about you and reached out to you in the first place is Doug
Oh, Doug Lyon.
Yeah.
That's funny. I was curious. Going to be like, how the hell did you hear about me?
Yeah.
Doug Lyon. Yeah. We're still connected on LinkedIn. He was my teacher in a couple of classes. Doug is hilarious. He's awesome.
Yeah, I had Doug for 2 classes a semester, and I was in a meeting with him, and he's like, "You do podcasts, right?" I'm like, "Yeah." He's like, "What are they about?" I'm like, "Action sports stuff." And he's like, "You should reach out to Super Frenchie." I'm like, "Oh, should I?" And here we are.
I have a funny story with Doug Lyon. Actually, I took my senior semester, like a business class or whatever, with him, and we had to put together a business plan for Lewis College because they were expanding and stuff like that. And my group was in charge of the marketing plan, which was pretty cool actually. It's that last one of the last important business classes you're taking. You're about to graduate and get fed to the lions and explore the world of becoming a professional, right, on the job market. And he was giving us pointers, on how to position yourself well, how to do well in job interviews, things like that. And one of the things he said is like, "Oh, and don't go saying like, oh yeah, I want to be a base jumper," or things like that. Like that's one of the advice that he gave us. Like he was trying to pick, I understand what he was doing. He was trying to pick a completely obscure, completely kooky activity and to not put that in your resume or interest or hobbies or whatever, and in my mind, I was like, dude, I just ordered my first base jumping parachute. I've been skydiving for a year and a half. Like, this is what I'm going to do with my life. And I was like, all right, Doug, I'm going to prove you wrong.
That's so funny. That's so awesome.
I never said it. So if he hears this in the podcast, that would be hilarious. Maybe tell him to listen to the podcast.
Yeah, I'll tell him to listen to it.
I'm not an example, but he was one of those great teachers that I had at the fort. They definitely, whatever school you go to, there's always, 1 or 2 teachers that stands out. But from the fort, I have like 5 or 6 or 7 teachers that stood out. Like I had such amazing teachers. I love the fort. Such a great school.
Yeah, I know. It's been great. I have a question about base jumping, actually. How did you get into skydiving in the first place?
How did I get into skydiving? So my dad was in the French paratroopers during his military service. My dad is an old man. He was born in 1939.
Oh, okay, yeah.
He still remembers hearing the Nazis walking down the street. That's how old he is.
Gosh, yeah.
It's crazy. And but anyway, then he had to do his military service in the early 60s or something like that, or mid 60s, late 60s, or early 60s, because he was about 25 years old or so. And so I grew up hearing his skydiving stories and things like that, so that really perked up my interest. And I was always, kids love parachutes. They always have like, parachute toys, things like that. I would make my own parachutes with like grocery bags and tie like a Playmobil or like a G.I. Joe to it and throw it down we had this big like staircase in my home, so just throw it in the middle of it. And I was obsessed with jumping with stuff already. I hit my first high dive when I was like 6 from the 30-foot high dive or something, and I was like, it was really a taste of the 4th dimension. It's like, oh my God, this is it. Like I got a taste of what actually is beyond this world. Some people might need to do drugs for this. Jumping off gives you a much better taste. Jump off stuff. So that's how it started. And then so I always knew I was going to skydive, but then when I was 9 years old, I saw my first images of base jumping in a French extreme skiing movie, that extreme snowboarders and skiers. And it was really kind of like a 80s cheesy, early 90s cheesy, mountain movie. But right there, I was so struck and compelled by what the characters were doing and actually the level of commitment to their craft. It was the first time I saw grown men that were willing to die for what they loved. Aside from watching war movies when a guy is doing the right thing for humanity and getting killed by the enemy, it was like a completely different frame where it could be perceived as pointless. But for me, these men already understood that there was a whole other dimension to life, to dedicate your life to your craft. And that resonated so deeply with me that first of all, I was like, I'm going to base jump. There's no question about it. It looked like the most terrifying thing ever, but the most fulfilling at the same time too. And right there, I kind of made the pact with myself that I was going to, do this. And I just had to pay my dues and earn my rank within the community, within the tribe, and so that's what I did, man. And then I got to work early on, and so I always had this idea. I never told anything to my parents. I went back and saw that movie 4 times at the theater in a row. And my mother was so pissed. She cut me off pocket money. I think she already got a feel that she was losing her son to a culture she disapproved of. Yeah. But it was too late, man. I already sold my soul to the devil, you know. So.
Yeah. to those clips.
Yeah. So anyway, so that's it. And then moved to the US. Fast forward, I was going to start skydiving when I was 18, but I blew my knee, and then so I had to wait a little bit. Then I moved to the US, and then I heard there was a student at the Fort that had a skydiving license, and she was skydiving on the weekends. I kind of looked, where I could skydive, and then I ran into Shane McConkey, who was kind of like one of the fathers of ski base jumping. He passed, unfortunately, in 2009, but I met him at a trade show where my sponsors wanted me to go. It was in Las Vegas at the time. Carpooled with Sven Brunso, a local pro skier in Durango, who was one of my mentors when I first moved there, because I don't live in Durango anymore. He took me under his wing and kind of showed me the in and out of the industry, how to do it, how to become a professional. And his mentorship was so valuable, and I still apply today a lot of the pointers that he gave me, And anyway, went to my first trade show, and it was overwhelming, all these pros everywhere and all these brands. And I was there with a sponsor. Like, whoa, man, this is the American dream. I'm getting a taste of it. This is great. And I met Shane McConkey, and we had this awesome conversation. He's like, all right, cool. I was like, hey, man, I'm a huge fan of what you do, and I really want to base jump since I was a kid. I want to ski base jump. He's like, all right, here's what you have to do. And then a few weeks later, I blew my knee again. So I had to wait to get healthy, get surgery. Went back to France, worked 3 jobs, and then saved all the money, came back to the States, and then got back on skis, did the extreme skiing circuit again. I was cleared by the doctors to start charging again. And then right after, I just went straight to a drop zone and started skydiving. Did that for a year and a half. Then I finished my license in Belen, New Mexico. So I was landscaping for $10 under the table because I was a student. I wasn't allowed to work with my student visa. So I just landscaped for $10. And yeah, man, you can't work.
You can't work with a student visa?
No. Then eventually I could do a paid internship with Perg. So that was cool, but that was only like part of the season, right? And they hooked me up with like a season pass and all that. So I could ski for free, and I had all my ski gear for free. I had saved money from France, and then I had bought an apartment for like 30 grand in France, in Lyon, when I was 18 with my sister. And then when I sold it, I made enough money to pay for my tuition for that. So, I wasn't a wealthy kid, but I always figured out a way, when there's a will, there's a way, right? And it's not the size of your paycheck, is what you make with it, And
so true.
I just literally gathered pennies here and there to just kind of make it come together. My family helped me out a little bit too, and I remember my sister sold her house one time, and she called me. She's like, hey, did you get my present? And I was like, what? And then I was going to go to breakfast with friends, and I just checked my bank account because I didn't think I could afford to get breakfast at Carver's, And I looked at my account. I was like, I had like $1,200, and I was like, whoa, where did this money come from? And then she calls me, like, hey, I sold my house. We made a profit on it. So I sent you a little present. And I was like, a little present? Like, you just sent me $1,000. This is amazing, So anyway, all this little bit of, stuff just went along the way. The mentorship, being smart about your money. So I'd landscape for $10 an hour, and then get some cash, and then drive straight to Belen, New Mexico, and blow it all on skydiving,
Is that where you got your skydiving license?
I got my skydiving license at Skydive, New Mexico, in Belen. And
how far was that from Durango? Do you remember?
A 4-hour drive.
4 hours? Okay. Because I've been thinking about trying to get mine. So
yeah, go over there, man. I'll put you in touch with some of my friends that are still there. They're instructors. They're incredible. They took me under their wing. It's a skydiving school, but it's more like a club. It's like little planes. They're cool people. It's kind of like, half of them are kind of like desert people. It's another kind of weird group of outlaws in a way. But it was so cool, and I made friends for life, man. And that's the thing. Like in my life, like all these stepping stones throughout the process to get to where I wanted to be. Just build this community of I built this. I mean, I didn't build the community, but I became part of all these communities of like-minded people, and it's a special tribe, man. People that commit to their passions, to not only just make a living but dedicate their life to it. There's some strong personalities in there.
For sure. Dang. Your pro circuit that you skied in, what was that? What like comps were those?
So it was
pure stuff, or
it was big mountain stuff. And I did a little bit of park, but I wasn't a great park skier. I could do a backflip, switch backflips, double backflips, or big laid out Superman front. So it looked cool, but it wasn't enough to win comps. I got third at a park comp once. And then in Europe, I did some derbies, which are like pretty much you take like a Super G course and you put it on a big mountain face with gates and everything.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And the run is like 3 miles long. and you go in 70 miles per hour. Like people die in those comps and shit. You know,
Wow.
and I was doing those when I was at 14, I wanted to do them, but I was too young to compete. So they let me go as a forerunner. So I started doing this stuff. And that's when I really got a taste of what it's like to push it, man, fully.
Yeah.
Where you're so committed, you're in this bubble of awareness and commitment. And if you get out of line, you will be reprimanded heavily.
Oh,
and,
yeah.
So I did some of those. And when I moved to the US, so back in the day, there was 2 tours. Now there's the Freeride World Tour, but the Freeride World Tour now joined the European Tour and the North American Tour. That they both called themselves World Tours, but it wasn't a world thing. Sometimes some Euros would come compete in the US, Americans would compete in Europe, but it was kind of like separate. And eventually they joined and formed the Freeride World Tour. So it was before that. So I did the US Extreme Free Skiing Championships in Crested Butte, which was the first big freeride comp in the US. I'm not necessarily a big fan of the word extreme, but he was in the title. And then there was the US Free Skiing Open, which was a series of free skiing comps throughout the US. That was the big one. And then I did local comps like the Colorado Freeride Series, things like that. And, you know, I never won. I got like top 10 several times, like 7, whatever. Qualifiers, it'd be like, you know, top 5, which was cool, you know, but it wasn't enough to win really. But my last comp, I had a perfect run that should have been getting me on the podium, and somehow I got stiffed, you know, from not my final run of the finals, but like my entry run was technical and fast, but I didn't score high enough because I didn't hit enough features. It's like, dude, I skied the face in 30 seconds. Like that should be worth a lot more, you know? And right there, I was like, you know, I'm done skiing for judges. It's not really my thing, you know? And I was kind of bitter about this, but competition always felt really artificial to me. And I really enjoy, that's why I love ski base jumping, because it's the level of commitment is so high. It's so big that you're not comparing yourself to someone else. You're literally, you skied well or you don't. And if you don't, well, you're going to get really messed up or you'll die. So it's just kind of like a you know, black or white approach that is a lot more polarized. And I really enjoy that level of engagement and commitment for sure. So.
What was your first ski base jump?
My first ski base jump was on Mount Hood in Oregon. And I was so out of college. So I graduated from the fort, and I was sponsored by a company at the time, a French clothing brand. It was kind of like the French North Face. And when they sponsored me for a couple of years, so I was wearing their stuff, and I knew the brand, you know, it's a 70-year-old brand or something. It's really old. And when I graduated, they're like, hey man, you've been on the team for a while. You get a business degree. We need a rep in the Northwest. And I was like, no way, man, I don't want to be a rep. I grew up making fun of reps, you know, in the ski industry, working in shops. We're like, hey, look at this dude just coming in to sell us some jackets. You know, like we make fun of him. I was like, I don't want to be that dude peddling goods, you know. But then they convinced me, and they put money down for a car, and they paid me enough to ski. But where they really got me, they're like, yeah, and all your travels are paid for. And I was like, because I wasn't an independent rep, because the brand needed to take off. So I was all in-house. And it's like, shit. It's like, well, that's pretty much, I was making money for skiing, but not from skiing, but not enough to live off, you know? And so right there, I was like, that's actually pretty much a sponsorship. And my territory was the Northwest. So I traveled all over the Northwest with my skis, my parachutes, and my dog, and just hit every spot I could. I'd go talk to like 5 stores, and then I'd stay in the area for 3 or 4 days, became friends with the kids at the shop that would, you know, let me crash and, you know, on their couch or whatever. So did some photo shoots a little bit everywhere. And then my first season of repping, I got cover of Ski Magazine. I got so much publication.
Wow.
And then I drove through Oregon a few times, and I just started base jumping. I had like maybe 20 base jumps, but, you know, being a pro skier already at that time, I was like, dude, there's got to be a way to do a ski base here on the Hood. Called Shane McConkey, and he told me, no way, man. I looked for 6 years. There's nothing to ski base on the Hood. I had one failed mission, and then finally heard of another cliff on the southwest side of the mountain. And went there and did it. And then my local friend, who was an ex-pro skier, called a couple of camera guys. We filmed it and put it on the local news. And the next day I was getting calls from Good Morning America, CNN, all these guys. Are like, what the hell is happening? And this is how my career took off. So it's just doing it first on Mount Hood while traveling for repping.
So like that first jump that you ever did, like just took off immediately.
Yeah. And then after that, so there was a big thing in Durango, Engineer Mountain. When I first moved to Durango, I saw Engineer right away, and it's the first big mountain I saw when you drive to Perg. It's right at the end of the highway.
Yep.
So I became obsessed with this thing. I was like, I got to ski that face looking at the highway, you know.
Yep.
And I started talking about it, and people were like, "No way, dude!" It's like, first of all, you don't want to ski this until April because the avalanche danger here is super high. A bunch of people have gone buried up there before, and that cliff at the end on the route that you want to ski is way too big to survive. It's at least like 300 feet. And then I told him, well, you know, I thought about base jumping since I was a kid. So if I throw a parachute on my back and jump off, I could probably fly away. And everybody was like, no way, man, like, you're going to die. And then that's somebody heard about me talking about this, and they showed me videos of Shane McConkey. So then I was like, oh my God, this guy's doing what I want to do. And it totally works. There's the technology. So then I met Shane, you know, things got in motion. So then left Durango, ski base in Mount Hood. And then after that, came back to Durango a month later, and then I ski base jumped off Engineer. And then, you know, once you can, like in the eye of the media, they kind of keep an eye on what you're doing.
Yeah.
And then, you know, or you send images to your contacts there, you know, because that's the only way you can, you know, succeed as an athlete. It's not to be a media whore, but you have to self-promote in an elegant way, you know, to be able to keep showing your adventures. If you're not competing, that's the only way you can make a living. And or take it to the next level. And then last thing I know, CNN then picked it up again. So I ended up on CNN like 26 times in 1 year. And but the rewarding part was when I was in Durango and trying to buy a base jumping parachute, it's like $3,000 or something. I didn't have that kind of money to buy a custom parachute. I didn't even have a skydiving parachute. I was just borrowing skydiving rigs from friends or from the drop zone, you know? Yeah. And so Your Flesh Tattoo in town, one of the artists there, Roger Salinger, made me a drawing, but I had to get a tattoo in exchange, which I already had anyway, you know, so I got a tattoo from Your Flesh Tattoo. They made me a drawing. And then Scab Brewing was like, hey, maybe base your logo on some of our drawings. You know, we're a pretty popular brand in town, make some t-shirts and we'll help you sell them. So then I made 100 t-shirts, sold them through Bubba's Boards, through Scab Brewing, through Boarding House, through Inferno. All the shops got behind Four Corner River Sports, Pedal the Peaks. Wow. All the shops got behind it. They bought the t-shirts up front. And they're like, yeah, we'll sell them after. So last thing I know, I'm like, holy shit, I got all this cash. And the whole community got behind it. And I'd be walking downtown Durango and a kid would be like, hey, that's the French kid who's going to base jump off Engineer. And then somebody else would be like, no way, he's going to die. He's like, yeah, I'm going to buy a t-shirt, you know, like, you know, and that's, wow. So for 4 years, I talked about it, but the whole community in Durango backed it up. They bought t-shirts, they helped me out, you know, and again, when there's a will, there's a way. You find a way to do it. And I had the right people advising me, but then I just had to make it happen. And then that was just enough to buy my parachute. Like I sent the check for the parachutes. I had $90 left in my checking account. That's all I had left. You can't really live off that. So then coming back to Durango is more than just doing a ski base at Engineer. It was a way to follow through with what I promised I was going to do. Yeah. And, the night before, Shane McConkey actually heard about what I was going to do, and I sent him a couple of pictures, and he was like, "Man, I wouldn't jump that cliff. It's at 12,000 feet. It's like the air is really thin. Your opening is going to be really low because the air is thinner up there. And it's not really tall. The cliff is only 230 or 40 feet or something like that. 250 maybe at the most. And it's kind of like a cirque. So you open in between a bunch of rocks. If you have a bad opening, you'll slam back in a cliff." Yeah. Shane was like, I don't really do jumps like that anymore. They're not really worth the risk. And then I told him, well, Shane, thank you very much. I appreciate your input, but I'm going to do it anyway. You know, I committed to it. And then when I stood up there, I started skiing down, like 200 or 300 people drove from Durango and they were all lining up the road up Cold Bank. And I could hear people screaming from Engineer and ski based and landed. And there's a bunch of friends that had climbed to the landing. I land and they hand me a cold beer. And I was like, oh my God, it's so sick. So the whole thing was just, you know, another, you know, example of how special living in Durango was. Cause it's, you're an outsider technically. You're a weird kid coming from France with some kooky ideas and dreams. And people backed it up, man. They took it seriously. I think they felt the hunger and desire to make it happen, and the authentic desire to do this. And that's what I loved about Durango, man. People just, for them, it wasn't just a kooky idea. They're just like, let's help this kid and see if he's actually going to do it, you know? And I'm forever grateful, man. My time in Durango just really fast-tracked my whole professional life.
Nice. That's awesome. How did you get up to the top of Engineer? I've done that when it's dry, and even that's kind of sketchy.
It's better in the winter when you have snow, because you have, you know, it freezes over and all that. So I just started obviously from Cold Bank, packed up there, then skinned up to the top of, you have that gully atop the forest when you get to the plateau. Then you get to the last ramp to the summit, that little arête. Yeah. And there, I had a couple of friends come and help me out. Grady James, who's a local biker and all that. And there was a kid, Alec, that used to be a lifty at Perg. And he was like, yeah, we'll come and help you. Because I didn't have custom gear at the time to carry my parachute and all my ski gear. When I ski base Mount Hood, I boot packed up the mountain for an hour with just skis on my shoulder. Yeah. I was like, I can't really do this on engineer. I was like, I need people to kind of help me. So I had two friends, and they each carried a ski on their pack for me. And so then I borrowed a pair of crampons from a friend, an ice axe from another. Yeah. And then we got up like that. It took I think it took 3 or 4 hours. Oh, okay. I got to the top, and they skied down the ridge, and then I skied down to the other side. And it was a special moment, man, when you're up there with friends that known for a while, and you're about to do something that has never been done. You have a taste of your potential doom or your potential glory at the same time. It's kind of on an equal level. And as up there, man, I didn't eat anything too, because I was running on adrenaline. I was so anxious, and I just drank a bunch of water. So when I got up there, I totally crashed and bonked, and they fed me bagels with Nutella and stuff, and half their food with me. And I was like, so these guys, I owe it to these guys too. They helped me so much to do this. But then when you sincerely and genuinely tell your friend you love him, and you give him a hug before you drop into a face like that, it's truly heartfelt, because you might never see them again. And those moments might seem very dark and crazy for people, but it's beautiful. For me, it's really a taste of true, authentic living. There's this. You come back from something like that, you never really come back, actually, because a part of you stays up on that mountain forever, and you have these memories in your heart and your head for forever. And it's you actually, when you come back, I remember after that, went to Perg and to grab a drink, whatever, and we're like, oh man, you finally did it after 4 years and all that. And you're happy, you're smiling, but you're instantly disconnected almost. It was so hard to come back to the real world in a way, and that night was actually the first night I experienced kind of like the Blue Monday of action sports, when it's not like, like if it's like you build up that moment for so long, for many years, and then it's done in a few minutes, a few seconds in the air. And I was exhausted, man, but I couldn't sleep. All I wanted to do was sleep, but my mind was racing. I kept living the moment. My heart was racing. And it's almost like a slide. The higher the high, the lower the low, and it's a natural one. It's not like I was doing a bunch of drugs and a true Blue Monday where I went on a rampage and did a bunch of cocaine the night before, which I've never done, by the way. But that's the true definition of the Blue Monday, right? And there it was just living such an apex of your existence, makes it hard to come back. But that's something that, you learn to manage over the years. You realize that there's nothing wrong with you. It's just a perfect, normal sequence in the process of achieving your goals, right? It's not the highs all the time. And you don't do it for the high. You do it for the meaning, right? If you do things with no ethos, then it's shallow and pointless.
Yeah. Well, it's like what you're saying. It's like when you get that close to death, or like you are literally facing death, like you just appreciate life more.
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of like the old cliche, like live life, taste death, you know what I mean? But exactly. In the end, man, death is going to happen to all of us. We all have an expiration date. What do you do in the meantime? But also that notion of potentially losing everything is what gives the substance and the value of what you are doing as well, too. Yeah. And that's, I'm super fortunate to live that recurringly, almost on a weekly or daily basis, and, sure, some projects are way bigger than others. Since engineer, I've ski base jumped the Eiger, ski base jumped the Matterhorn, I ski base jumped Mont Blanc, the highest peak in Western Europe. And so that's the Alps trilogy, which these are the three deadliest peaks in the Alps, and got to ski base jump all of them. And Mont Blanc was my home mountain, so ski base jumping from the top of that mountain was huge, and it was a 2-day climb. The Eiger and Matterhorn, I cheated because I got dropped by a heli, But
okay.
now my son is 8 years old and he's giving me crap. So he's like, you got to go back to the Eiger Matterhorn and do it right and climb it first. So probably have to go back for that. But Mont Blanc is great because, climb for, 2 days with 50 pounds in your back and you're earning your descent. There's a whole, and I'm not even a religious person, man. Actually, I despise the idea of God. Maybe it's because I'm French and come from a secular country. But I don't necessarily enjoy that concept. If it can be a source of empowerment for people, cool. But for me, I think there's something vicious and unhealthy about about worshiping a potential God. But being in the mountains and pushing yourself that far emotionally, mentally, and physically is definitely, you tap into some spiritual shit, and that's what the mountains bring to you. It's that's where you connect the dots. You go up with questions and you come back with answers, and that's beautiful.
I would say you climb and earn your turns, but you're not doing many turns, so.
Well, I beg to differ. Not always like that. Some of them are a straight ramp to a cliff, and generally these don't take too long to access. But Mont Blanc, man, we got to ski 1,500 feet of knee-deep powder,
Wow.
And then skied, and then flew, and then we had to ski another 3,000 vertical, and then climb another 2 hours, and then finally we connected with a cable car and got back downtown Chamonix at like 1 p.m. And so that's the thing, integrating a parachute within the process, especially when you mix it with alpinism and mountaineering and earning your turns. Yeah. It's not just the isolation of the jump itself. It's a journey through the mountains where you climb, you ski, you jump, you fly, you land, you ski out and climb out of there too. It's beautiful combination.
That sounds like such a great adventure, actually.
Yeah. Wow. It's more than an adventure, man. It's a mission, man.
Yeah, totally.
With a goal and a purpose.
Right, for sure. Your movie just came out recently, didn't it?
Yeah, my movie came out. Actually, it came out this year in June, I think, something like that. And but technically, it was out before, but it was just on the film festival circuit all over the world. Gotcha. And we finished the movie in 2019, started playing late 2019 at film festivals, and then early 2020, then COVID hit. So that slowed everything down. Then film festival went back online. So then the movie went to a bunch of festivals. But we got to, 40 or 50 festivals worldwide. And then we just, then it was released on, iTunes and, every platform pretty much out there except Netflix. But so pay-per-view platform. So it's all out there. It's distributed by Greenwich Entertainment. They're the guys who did Free Solo. And,
okay.
Yeah. So they picked up my movie. Sorry?
Were you working with that crew then?
I did the movie pretty much with, so it's kind of funny. When I was 24 in ski based off Mount Hood, and I did an interview for a local ABC channel in Spokane, Washington. One of the guys interviewing me had an outdoor show, and he was just equally as naive as I was because we were 24 years old. And he was like, "Hey man, we should make a movie together." And I was like, "Oh, cool." I was good thinking, it's going to come out next year and we'll have a banger movie, and but no, it took 11 years. And, he quit local ABC News. He went to Chapman University, which is one of the best film schools in the US, graduated from there. Now he's teaching film at Eastern Washington University. Okay. And so he's a full-on documentarian. Now he's making a documentary on World War II African-American paratroopers. Yeah. And super interesting. It's so interesting. He's making another movie on parachutes. But so that's the guy who made my movie. And then I would send him hard drives. I'd send him 430 minutes of footage. I wasn't involved in the editing process, but he did the full-on librarian work where he reviewed every second and edited it. And then roped in production. They did a bunch of mountain movies like Fred Beckey, Dirtbag, The Legend of Fred Beckey, and K2, the Himalayas. They did a bunch of movies. They're in the Seattle area, so they connected with him. And like, hey man, we'd love to help you produce a movie. So they helped co-produce it. I mean, he directed it, they produced it, and then they were connected with all these outlets. And then Greenwich heard about it and they picked it up. So that's pretty cool.
So was it just you packing a camera? Or like, did you have a crew with you? Like, how did the filming go?
Well, it's funny because you're going to see through 11 years, you see the evolution, from, starting with, borrowing like a mini HD camera that was screwed on a helmet that was not waterproof and highly breakable and getting shots like that. And, gathering crews over the, gathering images from the crews that I worked with over the years, or sponsors would go on a shoot, or they'd hire a crew, and then we'd have permission to use the footage or things like that. And I was the first European athlete with GoPro back in the day and got their first viral video. So then,
wow, okay,
had some head cams before, so some of the footage is really old and grainy. You see the evolution in the technology. Then when I got on with GoPro, that was great because, all of a sudden we had these mini HD cameras that were shock resistant and waterproof, and so then that got a ton of footage with that. So a lot of it shot with GoPro, and then a lot of my friends were starting to they had their own production companies, and they'd get red cameras and things like that. And so then all of a sudden we just gathered all these amazing images over 11 years, and Chase put it all together. So we did a bunch of interviews with family members and myself. So it's kind of funny to see yourself at 24 years old doing an interview and finishing the movie when you're 35, and so there are many things that I would express differently now. And so if you watch the movie, that's kind of how you have to take it. It's a slice of time of 10 years in the life, pretty much.
Yeah.
And now it's like, I had a huge crash in 2013 as well. That was all filmed and documented.
Wow.
And, then I don't want to give too much away from the movie, but we documented all that. So you'll see the good, the bad, and the ugly in there. Yeah.
Well, it's just crazy to see how you were committed for 11 years to making this movie.
Well, it wasn't just for the movie. It's just my life, and for the thing why it took 11 years is because you can't force life to happen. It just happens as it happens. And no matter what, I was, dedicated as a skier and base jumper and recording everything. I'm always traveling my own camera, sometimes doing self-interviews in airplanes or, airports or climbing up a mountain or whatever. So I literally documented my whole life over 11 years. And I'm still doing so because I'm still, creating a lot of content, working with a bunch of brands and doing some, stunt stuff and all that, and working on new movies as well. So it's just you don't do it for the movie. It's just the movie is a way to kind of archive all that footage in a timeline story. But it's also the director's interpretation of my own life. I was not involved in the editing process at all. So I think he did a good job. There's many ways we could have taken that story. Yeah. And it came out well. So
that's awesome. Yeah. What are you doing now? What are you up to?
So I just got back from Iceland. I had a busy summer. I was went ski mountaineering in the Alps, tried to do a ski base jump, but turned around, it's too dangerous. Then I went flying wingsuits in Switzerland. So that was really cool. And buzzing cliffs going 120 miles per hour was that's absolutely amazing. But it's actually super. It looks crazy, but when you jump off, and especially now, the suit I have is not a 100% classical wingsuit. Like my arms are free. It's technically called a tracking suit, but I have a full wing on my leg and wings that go in your armpits. So you have full body freedom, but you have all the power from wingsuits. You have a little less glide, but more speed. So it's awesome. And it looks crazy, but it's, as you learn to fly these things, you learn to tap into that level of ultimate serenity and plenitude when you're doing it. Because first of all, if you put tension on this suit, generally get squirrely, and you don't want to get squirrely when you're flying in the mountains, right? So you have to shape the suit, shape your body, but stay calm and relaxed. And so it's a combination of going super fast while being super calm. It's like doing meditation in a Formula One car. You're just chilling. You're actually focusing on your breathing as you're flying. All right, no muscle tension. Awesome. Straight legs, tailbone out, shoulders flat, and then your body is like a ski, except that your shoulders are your edges, and so you're just carving the mountain with your shoulders, and like, it's amazing. So anyway, this
the real what?
Yeah, it was sick, man. It's the true fourth dimension. You land, you're highly energized, of course, from the jump, but you're highly mellow and peaceful from it too. It's a really strange level of excitement and plenitude and serenity, all mixed in one. It's incredible. And then after that, came back to the States for 2-3 weeks, and then went to Iceland for a shoot with the Thule, the roof racks from Sweden. I've been with them for 9 years. It's one of my main sponsors. And so I was there with Garrett McNamara and Xavier Delarue and, the whole team. So we had a bunch of pro athletes there, and we all have a specialty, big mountain snowboarders and skiers and big wave surfers. And it was great, like World Cup mountain bikers and World Cup ski racers. It was awesome. Yeah. And so, did a few jumps there. Got to travel there with my wife and my son, and had a great time. And then got back here, and I'm getting ready for winter and get some, work commitment this fall. I do more and more speaking for companies because, I talk a lot, so I might as well make a living out of it.
There you go. No kidding. That's awesome.
So yeah, doing more and more of that. And then, getting winter ready. That's the side that people don't see, is all the computer work that goes behind it. Like I go to bed every night at midnight, like putting proposals together and planning projects, and I'm planning some stuff in Asia, and so researching places to do things, and it's a tedious job, man. It's so much work, but it's I wouldn't have it any other way, because this is what I chose to dedicate my life to, Well,
it feels like these days, like no matter what you're doing, you're on a computer a lot.
Yeah, I think anybody is. Yeah, for sure. That's a good point.
I feel like most jobs are very computer driven, but the travel is super cool that you get to do. So
yeah, man. And I love being on airplanes. I love airports.
Yep.
I love this stuff. Yeah, it's not necessarily the most environmentally friendly when you're doing environmentally aware activities. So I get that. That's the part that definitely bugs me. But at the same time, there's, it's things are changing, things are evolving. Hopefully we'll have some less impactful ways to travel. But aside from that, man, I love traveling, man. You get to, especially going back home to the Alps, places that these are places that I know. I love discovering new places, but there's some special place like Iceland. It was my 4th time over there. And it's one of those places that really captures a part of you. And so going back over there almost feels like going home. And so you have all these pockets around the world that feel like home.
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome. What are your favorite places like that you've been?
Iceland, New Zealand, obviously the Alps, Lingen Alps in Norway. It's 400 miles past the Arctic Circle. You're almost in Lapland. I did the first ski race up there. Yeah. And super cool. I really enjoy Australia. Was pretty cool too, but I prefer New Zealand. It felt a little more, where I was, it felt a little more natural, but it's cool. We're doing some skydiving on the beach and all that. It was
cool. Yeah. I've seen some of that. Yeah, it looks so cool.
Yeah, it was rad. And but yeah, no, I would say, if I have to pick a top 3, definitely, I think I kind of like the Nordic climate a lot more. I'm not a big fan of the heat. So, I've been to places like Costa Rica, things like that, super cool to surf. But Chile was amazing, but I really enjoyed the vibe in Nordic countries. Like I'd say Iceland, Norway, and then the Alps, obviously, because it's
the Alps are gorgeous. I got over to the Swiss Alps a little bit.
Oh, no way. Yeah. Where did you go?
Well, what was that town called? I forget. It was a few years back, but I was in, we ended up in Austria too.
Okay. You did a big tour. You did the American way of traveling, of seeing a bunch of places, but not remembering them.
Yeah. Well, I was on this tour group for like,
okay.
So I knew what country I was in, but the town.
Yeah. No, it's hard to keep track, man. I'm giving you crap, but it's like, it's a cool way to travel like that, because you get to kind of see a little bit of everything. But that'll be my advice for whoever is listening. If you travel to Europe, don't try to see as much as you can in one trip. Pick a place. Yeah. Rent a house there and stay there for 2 weeks. Go to the local market, go to the local restaurants, travel within the area within, a couple hours, renting a car, whatever, and go check it out and hike the local mountains, meet some of the locals, especially if you have a hobby, like you're a rock climber, you're a skier, you're a skateboarder, whatever it is, like go do your activity in the country. You will meet locals, and that's the best way to travel and really, I don't want to say infiltrate because it sounds a little negative, but to get accepted really within a community. And that really opens the doors, and you'll have a much better, you have a true understanding and feeling of what the place is about, by connecting and doing things with the locals,
Yeah, for sure. And that's what I want to do more of. But that trip I did, I think I was under 18. So
yeah.
I wasn't, sure. It was a little different, but now knowing like what I learned on that trip, there's a lot of places that I'm looking to go back to after I graduate college eventually.
Yeah, for sure. Do it. Do it while you're in college, man. Take a summer off and go, save some money, make it happen. It's like, and you can you can stay in hostels, or especially again, if you have a passion or a craft that you like to work on, then that'll help you go to cool places, you know what I mean, and meet the right people, and kind of like, dude, like base jumping is one of those sports, man. Like,
Yeah.
you get to connect with so many people all over the world. It's always like a friend of a friend, and then you always figure out a place to stay, and they show you the local spots. Especially now with social media too, it's like,
Yeah.
man, I go on a trip sometimes with a person that I never met, but like we know what each other has done or accomplished, or their level of experience within the sport.
Yeah.
And that's how I traveled to Switzerland this summer, man. I went to Switzerland to fly, and I'd been there several times, but met with this guy Florian, and Florian Kong on Instagram.
Okay.
He's a super cool jumper and good dude. And
Yeah.
we jumped the same gear. We have tons of friends in common, connected, and then traveled in Switzerland for a week and a half and just jumped some amazing cliffs. And he knew all the spots. So he was like, "Hey man, yeah, I'll take you there, this and that." And then
Wow.
we're planning our next trip together. We'll probably go to the Dolomites together and discover some spots now together. So that's a great way to travel. If you're already part of like international community through a sport or anything, that's travel through this. That's how you'll break through.
Yeah. You're in Utah now, right?
I'm in Oregon now.
In Oregon. Okay.
Yeah.
How did you end up in Oregon?
I live in Bend, Oregon. So it's a lot like Durango. It's cool. It's smaller mountains than, the Rockies. We don't have like 14,000 feet peaks around here, but
yeah,
it's great. You have, we ski at Mount Bachelor, and in the summer, you can ski. I skied until July this year, on Mount Hood. It was sick.
Wow. Okay.
And the beach is only 3.5 hours away. And I surfed my first 30-foot wave last year too. We have a big wave here. So
wow.
I didn't paddle it, but I got towed into a wave. So I got friends over there with, jet skis and stuff. And so it's pretty much like I have cliffs that I can jump like 30 minutes from my house, and skiing 30 minutes the other way, and the beach 3.5 hours away, and Mount Hood a couple hours away, and the skydiving school an hour away. So I'm always doing something, man. It's awesome.
So much to do. Yeah, that's crazy. Water scares me. Surfing is terrifying.
Yeah,
You
me
get
too.
rocked.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, you get put back in your place, man. But it's weird, like riding. Obviously, I don't have a ton of experience in surfing big waves, but I've surfed for 20 years or so. But surfing a 30-foot wall of water was like, it was like skiing a big mountain face, except that the mountain is moving with you. It was kind of like, those few times when you get to escape an avalanche or ski with some slough, things like that. It felt like that, except that it's like that every time. So, man, I have so much respect for big wave surfers, because it's that's speaking of commitment, man, that's full commitment for sure. So.
Yeah, totally. How long does a big wave like that last? Like, how long are you on it?
Well, I think it depends on the waves. Like some waves like open and dump you, and then you have like a short shoulder ride or whatever. Like you look at Mavericks, for example, it's not, you cover long distance, but it's not necessarily the length of the ride, it's the quality of the ride, right?
Right. Yeah.
But the wave I surfed was, I don't know, it was maybe like it was like a 15-20 second ride, which is pretty good for a long for a wave, So, but no, it's great, but it's not necessarily the length of the ride. It's more like it's just the power, the shape of it, the mental pictures, and the sound you drop in and you hear it breaking behind. It's like this. You're just like, do not fall. Like you feel the power. It's so cool, man. And it's you see it like crashing over your head, and just it's full on. It's so full on. Like I came out of the water, my eyes are just like, I caught like, just like 6 or 7 waves, but it wasn't that much. But I was like, okay, I'm good. I want to end on a high note, because it's just so charged that it's draining emotionally and physically, of course. Especially here in Oregon, the water is super cold. It's like 50 degrees, so you exert a lot of energy, and then it's another full body, mind, and heart experience. I think all these sports have similarities. It's just the frame of execution is pretty much similar. It's just the variables that change. So if you kind of you have that 10,000 hour rule that you have to put in 10,000 hours to master something. While in action sports, if you're an athletic guy and let's say you've surfed and you've ridden a board for a while, and it's kind of like that 10,000 hour rule from skiing translated into, a 5,000 hour rule in surfing. And then when I started base jumping, that went into not even the 1,000 hour rule, and skydiving was like pretty quick. And it's like, you can really, that's how you can kind of become a multi-sport athlete. Is you can learn a lot from each discipline, and it's it's just like anything in life, man. It's a stepping stone to the next thing. So.
Yeah, exactly. Doing any extreme sport kind of helps with everything else, is what I've noticed.
Yeah. And again, I'm not a huge fan of the word extreme, but they are extreme because it's extreme consequences. Yeah. But I think I prefer the term action sports because it's heavy action, but at the same time it doesn't necessarily do justice for the intensity of it. So I think maybe a new terminology will have to be invented, but it's almost like, that's why this experience is so amazing, that words, no matter how well chosen they can be, will never do it fully justice.
Yeah. Well, I feel like the words are chosen by people who don't do the sports. Or for people outside the community. Because when you're inside the community, it's not really those things.
That's a good point. That's half my job now is, more than half, 2/3 of my job is to break down those stereotypes and cliches and preconceived and pre-made expressions by others that they just copy and pasting on, that unfortunately some athletes just adopt without thinking about it. Yeah. And it's, like things like adrenaline junkie and daredevil and all this stuff. It's like, absolutely not, man. It's the opposite of this. You don't do things for the rush. You do things. And if you do it for the rush, in base jumping, that generally won't serve you well. You'll probably get hurt, die, or be too scared to keep going within 3 years. I see it all the time, So, but if you last more than 10 years in that sport, you generally have a much different approach for it, or a different foundation, a different ethos. Again, the meaning is everything. So.
Yeah, for sure. I have 2 more questions for you.
Go for it.
And my first one is, if 10 years ago, what would have you told yourself? Like now.
10 years ago. That's a really good question. What I would have told myself is, all you know is that you don't know.
Yeah.
Because it's especially with base jumping and big mountains. Where I grew up skiing the Alps, I'm not trying to bring a dark side of it, but it's the area where I grew up is, one person dies every 3 days in the mountains there of any mountain activity, skiing or climbing or paragliding, or a tourist falls down a trail, hiking. Yeah. And so that it's a reality of it. But then when you're in it and you really get worked with, losing friends and getting hurt. And, I think while we filmed that movie in that 10-year span, I think I lost over 50 people that I knew, not all close friends, but it's like, it's a lot of,
wow.
And it's also because in there it was biased because there's a lot of pioneering, a lot of discovering new disciplines, which comes with a lot of casualties. Unfortunately, I knew a lot of the guys in there, and I didn't know how this was going to impact me. And so that was kind of like, the thing. I think, what you don't know is that how it's going to impact you. But I guess that would bring me to a second point, and that point would be to embrace it all, because fear really is your best friend. There's people tell you they conquer fear and all that. It's BS. Fear is always going to be there. All you're doing is you're either ignoring it or you're just managing your anxiety, and just embrace the whole process, because it's incredibly rich, and that's how you're going to be able to do it well. To embrace the whole process, for sure.
So embrace fear, not conquer it. I love that.
Yeah, man. I have a friend actually who wrote a book on that, and called was it The Art of Fear? And it says how and we actually had a very similar approach on fear, and I didn't necessarily realize that what I was consciously doing over the years. And when you watch the movie, it's exactly this. It's like, at first I'm 24 and I'm just putting my fear to the side. I even say it in the movie, and then I just jump off and do it. Then after that, I'm just kind of like managing my anxiety. And then towards the end of the movie, it's really a place of acceptance and transcendence, accepting of your potential, success and glory, but also potential failure, which means accepting, succeeding or potentially dying. And when you put both of these on the same level, you reach a stage of acceptance of who you are and where you are and what you do, which is in a way a form of existential emancipation. You kind of floating away from your, your emotional tie downs too much, because you're transcending it. And that's the only way you can get to that next level and really accomplish everything that you want to accomplish. There's something hugely meditative about it, and that's And I think a lot of it came from just embracing the whole process. I mean, it's often, man, I'll go on a project and I go from wanting to throw up to literally feeling elated at the top. So and everything in between. Not that it's a bad omen or that something bad's going to happen. It's you just tuning in with your environment so you can become a survival machine.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's so much just reading the conditions and knowing if you can do it or not, I feel like.
Yeah, for sure. But sometimes, sometimes the math barely adds up. The error margin is almost there's none, so you got to stick it perfectly. And these are the moments that really don't do this all the time too. You don't want to go to 100% all the time. Keep it 80% most of the time. And then once you're ready, build for those 100% kind of moments. It's this constant process of becoming. And then for this short amount of time, you are. Just a small moment of being, but then you go back to becoming, being, and then that's why when you accomplish a big project, that's only a third of it. The other 2/3 of it is it's the aftermath, communicating about it, sharing the experience, and all this stuff, but it's also rebuilding yourself, going back to basics and rebuilding yourself for the next project, so it's an exhausting process all the time. And that's why, you can't do this if your ethos is not right. So
yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
The last question for you is, what is your meaning of life?
My meaning of life, to honor my passions.
Yeah,
because I think totally passions are a true passion becomes an existential pillar, and your life is built on your existential pillars. If it's just a hobby or something you enjoy, it's not necessarily existential, and honoring your passion is, in my opinion, some people might disagree or think that I'm just young and dumb, but I'm not, that young anymore. I just turned 38. So, I mean, I'm not old yet, I'm in my peak for what I'm doing, but it's really honoring my passions is really what has given meaning to the good times, but the bad times as well, and that's a driving force that will help you create the life that you want. Mm-hmm. And then also, what can you hope for in life, really? Only two things: a good life and a good death. And so, I mean, that's it, man. Whatever that means to you, I don't have the answer, but if you live a good life and you die well, then pretty much made it, man. So,
exactly. What else?
If you honor your passions, most likely you're gonna have both. So yeah. It's awesome. We keep hearing about people chasing happiness. I just want to be happy and this and that. It's like, happiness is cool, but in the end, it's like, whatever. Fuck being happy, man. Like, fulfillment is way more important, because if you fulfill, like, you will. Happiness is a temporary lived emotion, whereas fulfillment never goes away. You can be on your deathbed and reflecting on, or still feeling what you did maybe 20 or 30 years ago. And these are the moments that become the apogee of your life. So build those apogees of your life.
Yeah, for sure. I know a lot of people that are talking a lot about being happy and about all they want is like to be happy. But I think that the fulfillment approach, I feel like first off, English doesn't have enough words for these emotions. But
this is why everybody needs to speak French.
Yeah, I know. French is gorgeous. Like, I could speak French. But yeah, well, where can we follow you?
At Super Frenchie Official on Instagram, Super Frenchie Official on Facebook, and then Twitter is just at Matthias Giraud, because somebody took Super Frenchie, but they don't use it. But anyway. So I'd say, follow me there, reach out if you have any questions. I'm always happy to give pointers. I often get people that try to get into base jumping and this and that, and always happy to respond. I'm not promising that I can every time. Otherwise, I have a website, superfrenchie.com as well. Okay. And if you want to check out the movie, superfrenchiemovie.com, and you can see where it's playing, or you can click on watch at home, and you can just see wherever you can stream it. So that's about it. But go out there, make it happen, be fulfilled, and because the second you chase happiness, it's gonna go away. So I would end on one maybe one book recommendation. That's a book it's the only book I read twice in my life that really helped me understand a lot of those concepts. And I read it after the suicide of my sister. She committed suicide when she was 27. I was 18 at the time. Tried to make sense of things, and I read this book a year after called Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl. And that man, survived the concentration camps, Jewish psychiatrist, the Nazis destroyed all his work. He had this goal past his suffering. That was his existential pillar. And then he powered through it all, finished his work. And that's probably the most powerful book I've ever read. And he wrote it in 9 days. He probably had so much bottled up inside from the most brutal experience anybody can go through, and create this beautiful piece of work. So I encourage anybody listening to read that book, because it'll change your life, or it'll help you get your ducks in a row for sure.
Yeah, I'll have to go buy that right after this. So,
all right, good.
Thank you so much.
My pleasure.
Thank you guys for listening. I hope you have a great rest of your day, evening, night, whatever time it is for you, and I will see you guys in the next episode.